Hey y'all, happy Sunday. Hope everything is going well for you and yours. This is the portion of the show where we let YouTube send out the notifications via social media, let folks know that the broadcast is getting ready to start. We'll sit here and we'll count down the next 2 minutes before I push that button and go live. If you happen to be watching this on replay, go ahead and scrub past this graphic until you see my smiling face. If you have any questions and you're joining us today in the live chat, feel free to go ahead and add those questions to the live chat now, and we'll get to them in due course during this live Q&A session. So, sit back, relax, grab a beverage, and we'll get going in about 30 seconds. Hey y'all, happy Sunday. How's it going? Hope everybody is doing well. We got a bit of a full house this morning. Looks like we have 38 people checking us out. Welcome aboard. Glad you could join me. I don't know about where you are, but today it is a hot day. It's a perfect day for staying inside and trying to get a little bit of work done in here, but man, it is roasting. I'm in Southern Oregon near a little town nobody's ever heard of called Medford, and the local forecast here from the National Weather Service is calling for 114 Fahrenheit today. For those of you not in the U.S., that's 45.5 Celsius. And I don't care who you are, that's just crazy to be outdoors in that kind of weather. So, yeah, I'm indoors today. But that's okay. I've got a lot of stuff to catch up on. Those of you back east a little bit who are getting a little bit of rain, I do hope you'll be neighborly and share it with us, because, oh, man, is it hot. I see we have Miss Beverly Benham joining us from Corvallis. That's a couple hours up the road from me. And I really hope you guys aren't as sweltering hot as it is down here. But man, and now you guys know why my plans for the shop shed are I'm talking to a company about a mini split system. It's only 100, and I mistyped earlier. It's only 192 square feet. So it doesn't need much. I'm looking at somewhere around 12,000 BTU, but that's why I insulated it so well, because no, ain't nobody got time for this kind of sweaty, sweltery weather. So let's see. Today is open Q&A, and we've already got a few questions out here, and we'll get into them in just a second. But first, I wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping back here on the backside. And that is, number one, you'll notice down in the description box of this video, I still have the link for the GoFundMe for Dave Gatton's recovery from his quadruple bypass surgery. The GoFundMe has kind of stalled a little bit, and we'd like to get him up a little bit higher. He really needs some help. He is a major player in the home hobby CNC world, and the man who is responsible for getting me involved in all of this. So I like to tell people that I am his fault. So if you can spare a couple of dollars to throw his way, there is a link down in the description box of this video. And I know I personally appreciate it, and I know as well that Dave does. He's still got a long row to hoe as far as his recovery is concerned, and every little bit helps. And if you have already donated, thank you sincerely from me, and thank you from Dave. So that's step one on the housekeeping. Step two is Michael Mazalik. He is premiering a video this afternoon at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. And it's a video I am very, very glad to see him do. And it is a comparison. He's going to compare and contrast the Photo VCarve toolpath that's included in VCarve and Aspire. He's going to compare that to the standalone program Photo VCarve, because there's some things in Photo VCarve that are not included in that Photo VCarve toolpath. Now, personally, I have Photo VCarve. I've had it for several years. In fact, I bought it right after I bought VCarve Pro version 8. And I have never had the chance to get in and actually use it. So I can't wait for this video today. So if you are interested in Photo VCarving at all, and you'd like to know if there are some things in the standalone Photo VCarve program that aren't included in the VCarve toolpath that's in VCarve and Aspire. See, I believe that was introduced in version 10. It may have been version 9. I don't really recall right off the top of my head. But I guess there are some differences, and Michael's going to go through them. And I can't wait. When I get moved into the new shop, that is one of the things that I do plan on exploring quite heavily, is the Photo VCarve. So I'll be looking forward to seeing that video this afternoon. Again, it premieres at 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern, and there's a link to that video down in the description of this video. So I hope to see y'all there. So, kind of sort of related, we'll go ahead and get into the questions right now. Rick French has a question. It says, I've noticed that your teaching is more into Aspire than in VCarve. I see that as a natural step for many of us, but I'm just looking for keys on when a newer user should make that jump. Relatively few of my videos are geared toward Aspire only, Rick. Almost all of my videos are for VCarve or Aspire, and some of them are for Cut 2D, not many. There are a few that are geared toward Aspire only, but I'm still learning Aspire as I go along and developing my techniques and developing my skills. So even though I'm demonstrating a lot of this in Aspire, because that's the program I own, the vast majority of what I'm doing is available in VCarve as well. And I don't know that I've mentioned this before, but you can tell by the thumbnail. The text in the thumbnail that I put up for the video, if it's red letters with a blue border, that can be done in VCarve as well as Aspire. If it's for Aspire only, it's blue letters with a red border, or I experimented a little bit with bright green letters with a red or blue border. So if you see red letters, it can be done in VCarve. If you see blue letters or green letters, that's Aspire only. It made sense to me at the time. It doesn't make a lot of sense now. As far as the rest of your question, about it being a natural step, but looking for keys on when a newer user should make that jump, that's going to be entirely up to you. Now, it is a large investment, and I understand that. But when you find the limitations of VCarve are getting in the way and you can't edit and create your own 3D models, or you find the limitation on importing one STL file or one 3D model into your artwork or into your design, that's when it's time to start taking a look at upgrading to Aspire. And again, one of the great things about Vectric is when you make that upgrade, they credit you for what you have already spent on whichever program you have. So if you bought the license for VCarve, which I believe in US dollars is $6.99, they credit you with that. So you don't pay full retail for Aspire. You just pay the difference in price. And I know it's still a large hunk of money, but it's when you start running into those limitations regularly, that's when it's time to start thinking about the upgrade. There will be a lot more Aspire only videos coming from me as my skills develop and I get more used to working with the program, because there are so many more things you can do with even the Vectric clip art with Aspire that you can't do with VCarve. Because remember, VCarve was never meant to be a 3D modeling program. So when you start running into those limitations commonly, that's your first clue that it may be time to start thinking about upgrading. So I hope that answers your question, Rick. I know people who have been using VCarve for, 10, 15 years now, going way, way back to some of its first incarnations. And they still use VCarve. They haven't run into those limitations and they don't really need them. So, it just depends on the type of work you want to do. So, okay, let's see here if we can get back down to a couple of more questions. Lots of folks talking about the shop shed and whether I'm going to be putting in air conditioning. Yes, I will be putting in air conditioning. I'm talking to a company right now about a mini split system, similar to a home central heat and air system. It does get cold here. We don't typically go below zero. We get down close to zero on occasion, but it's rare. The average winter temperature here is right around 29 or 30 degrees. So it doesn't get super, super cold, but we get super, super hot, as evidenced by, 116 degrees Fahrenheit for the next couple days. But let's see here. Find some more questions here. Boy, I thought we had more questions than we do. Lots of discussion. Okay. Darren Birds. How do you make raised rounded text? That is there are a couple of ways of doing it. In fact, that would be a good idea for a tutorial. Let me write that down. Raised rounded text can be done in VCarve using level clipping, but it's easier to do in Aspire. You're looking at something 3D. So again, VCarve is not a 3D modeling program, but you can cheat the system a little bit. And I think what I'll do is I will do a tutorial on that using both methods, one for VCarve and one for Aspire. So thank you for the idea. And I will get to work on that. I can't guarantee it'll be next week's video, but it might be, because that's a good natural progression from the stat text tutorials that we did a couple of weeks back. So let's see here. I also wanted to give a shout out to get back up here and find you all that already hit the super chats. That was Norman Peterson. Thank you very, very much for the super chat. I really appreciate you guys. You guys are really, man, I mean, the love and support that I have gotten from this community is just absolutely off the chain. And there's no way I can thank you guys enough. And Dave Blackburn also sent a $20 super chat. And I really, really honestly appreciate you guys. You guys are really something. I mean, thank you. Let's see here. Jigsy's Workshop says, a pity Vectric don't do a monthly sub. You know, I don't know the folks at Vectric well. I know a couple of them that I have talked with and collaborated with in the past, and I am doing a little bit more talking with them on the as far as the user group meeting that's coming up in San Diego this September. But I don't know if they have considered that. What I'll do is I'll ask. I mean, the worst they can say is, no, that's not something they've considered. Personally, and this is just me talking here, I'm not a big fan of recurring payments like that, monthly subscription type of deal. I prefer to pay once, buy once, cry once. It's done over with. And I can't speak for everybody, because obviously we have folks joining us from around the world. I'm not a big fan of storing credit card information and having other people with access to that information. I don't know, call me paranoid. But here in the US, between January and April, that's when we get our income tax refunds. If the government owes us money back, and I'll be honest, that's what I use to buy VCarve and the upgrade to Aspire. So, it's a large chunk of change that comes to you at one time. Boom, investment. And I also get to use my two absolute favorite words in the world. It's a business expense. It's deductible. So I can write it off of my taxes. So, I would kind of recommend that if you're getting into 3D carving really a lot, I would recommend going ahead, bite the bullet, and do that upgrade to Aspire, because just the number of options that open up to you, it's a whole new world. And Aspire makes those things a lot easier to do. I mean, they can be done in VCarve, but you kind of have to cheat the system a little bit when it's very straightforward in Aspire and you just a couple of clicks and it's done. So, but as far as a monthly, I'm not a fan of the monthly subscription things. I'm really not. So, let's see. Robert Dymock makes another good point here. Used one of your YouTube videos last night to refresh this old brain. I'm hip. One of the reasons I make videos is so I can go back and remember how I did something one time a year ago. Believe me, it helps a lot. Could not recall the proper way to do text on a curve. The video was to the point and solved the memory problem. Thanks. You're very welcome, Robert. I am going to be revisiting the draw text on a curve because a lot of things have changed since I made those videos. They were done in version 8 of the software, and some things have changed. Some things have been streamlined, and it's a lot easier. And where I used, I believe it was 2 or 3 videos, it can now be done in just a single video. So I do plan on revisiting that and doing some upgrades and modifications to some of those old tutorials. So, but I'm glad it did help you. So, let's see. David Williams used a super sticker. Thank you very much, David. Greatly appreciated. You guys are just absolutely the greatest. So thank you. Let's see. We had another question up here. And Dan Eilers wants to know what fonts work well for carving very small letters. That is a loaded question, and I really don't have a definitive answer because there are so many variables. Another video that I plan on revisiting was a video that I showcased an older site called wordmark.it. And it was a Flash website. Well, as many of you know, a lot of the major software publishers have stopped supporting Flash. And Flash is basically going away. It's gone the way of the dinosaurs, much like a dial-up modem has. Well, now, instead of using that Flash website, they've created an app, an extension for your web browser that eliminated a lot of the limitations that the Flash website has. So I'm going to be revisiting that website and installing that app in your, installing that browser extension. And what Wordmark IT does is it looks through your font list and you type in a phrase or a word in a text bar and then hit enter, and it goes through all of your fonts and it shows you what that text will look like in every font that's installed on your computer. That is a major help when you are trying to visualize what something is going to look like, and it will let you select certain fonts. You've got a list of about 4 or 5 that you think would work. You can select those and then filter them, and it'll just focus and show you what that text looks like in those fonts only, and just kind of eliminates all the rest of them that you didn't like or didn't plan on using. Now, as far as carving very small letters, what I find is more important than which font you use is the depth of the cut. So if you want to carve away an area and leave those letters standing proud, the smaller the text in height and width, I find the shallower you need to cut. There are a couple of ways of getting real good results, but there are a lot of ways of getting mediocre results. I find that running the outline of the font, running that toolpath first, and then offsetting a vector outside of that area, and then using larger fonts to clear away the rest of the material gives a better result. So you're just basically cutting the outline of that font first with a very tiny bit, then clear away everything else. It'll keep that larger bit from hitting the smaller area that you've got left behind accidentally and chipping it out. I also find the same gives me a better result when I'm V carving. So if I'm doing a V carve that has a clearance pass, I run the V carve first, then the clearance pass second. And I end up with a much, much better result that way. So I can't give you a name of a font that works well for small letters. The best I can say is practice on some scrap. But using that wordmark.it website does help. And I'll go ahead and put a link to it in the description, but I will be doing an updated video on that website down the road. It should be pretty quick because that is something that I've been planning on doing for a while now. So let's see here. Alrighty. Mr. Craig says, I'm new and trying to learn. I see people on YouTube making masterpiece V-carve inlays using 12-degree tapered ball nose bits. Yes. Is it just me or is this crazy? It's not crazy. Normally I see 60 degree and 90 degree. The main difference is, Mr. Craig, the depth of the inlay. If you are creating a very thin inlay where the male plug that's going into your inlay is, let's say, 1/8 of an inch or thinner, and you're not talking about something that's going to get heavy use like a cutting board. For a cutting board or a charcuterie board, you need a thick male plug. And that's when folks will go with the tapered ball nose bits or something with a very steep angle on it. Because a 60 degree or a 90 degree V bit will just carve away that angle will carve away too much material on the plug. They want that steeper angle so they can get a thicker plug. If you're doing something that's meant to be hung on the wall and you just want that contrast and the plug doesn't have to be real thick, or you've got wide, large areas that don't have a lot of thin, narrow details, then you can use a 60 degree or a 90 degree. But if you have a tiny, tiny inlay with a lot of thin details, the steeper the angle, the better. I have some 15 degree V bits. I have some 12 degree and some 10 degree tapered ball nose bits that I'll be getting further into inlays when I get into the new shop. So they're an option. Again, it's those two words that beginners don't like to hear. It depends, because the project is going to dictate which bit you should use. So I hope that helps. So let's see here. what we have going. Let's see. Okay, Steve wants to know, have you played around with the laser module? No, sir, I have not. I don't have a laser. I hope to get one after I get moved into the new shop. Like I said, this shop shed build has put everything on hold. But, brother, I'm here to tell you, when I get moved in, the number of projects is going to multiply. I will also be going back to posting weekly videos instead of every other week, because like I tell people, I have more ideas than a tail feather on a turkey farm. It's just right now I'm limited the number of hours I can spend outside actually cutting. For instance, weather being one big concern. With it being this hot, it's already, see, it's only 12:30 in the afternoon, and it's already 92 degrees outside, and that's just too hot out in that shop shed to fire up the computer and run the machines. So I have to go out early in the morning and risk annoying the neighbors to get any work done. So, but once I get moved in, I hope to get a laser, and then I'll be able to install and play with that laser module. But right now, it's just not happening yet. So let's see. Marvin Mays. Is there a way to get drawings from my primary laptop to my secondary laptop without having to save to a thumb drive? I need to get my primary laptop updated. There are all kinds of ways of doing that. If you are using a Windows computer, you can certainly use a service like OneDrive or a Google Drive and upload these things to the cloud, and then get on your other laptop and download them. Another thing that I tend to do is I have a small external hard drive that I believe is, let's see, I have a 2 terabyte external drive on this computer, 1 terabyte on the other one. But I also have a small, like 250 gig external hard drive that plugs in with USB. And I store files on that and take it outside and take them off onto the other computer. But when it comes to transferring G code, I don't want my controller computer to be on any network or go online. Its sole function in life is to run G code. So I still use a thumb drive, and it only takes a few seconds. I plug the thumb drive in, transfer the files to that thumb drive, walk it outside, plug it into that computer, transfer them off of that thumb drive onto that computer. I never run files from the thumb drive, and then go from there. So it only takes a few seconds. I know a lot of people disagree with me. They want their controller computer on a network, in which case it's real easy to share that folder. I just don't want that. So, your mileage may vary. There are several options, Wi-Fi and just using a cloud storage service like OneDrive or Google Drive or whatever. So I hope that helps. Excuse me. Okay, let's see here. I know we have some more questions. Russell Faraday brings up a good point. I'm in some financial trouble. Hope everything works out for you there, Russell. If I run out of money, I will still have V-Carve and Rhino. Right. Buy once, cry once. Subscription means if you hit hard times, you've lost your hobby tool. Correct. Correct. Absolutely correct. If it's on your computer, you don't have to worry about that monthly subscription coming due. So, okay, Bob Health to Bridle. Have you ever used the emboss component under the model tab on the toolbar? No, I have not, but that's something that I want to explore. I've not really found the need, but that is something I want to get into and see what I'm missing. And that's a good example of some of the things, some of the options that you have in Aspire that I just haven't gotten to yet, But I have not used it yet, but stay tuned, Film Note 11. Let's see. Hi, Mark. Have you come across IDC Woodcraft on here? He's a CNC channel and salesman. Garrett Fromm. Yes, I have come across him. What do you think of it? He focuses more on the CNC as a business side of things, which I think there is a very big need. I keep telling people that this home CNC hobby is one of those, if you build it, they will come type of a hobbies. And I warn folks, that be selective about who you show things to, because the minute people see what you can do with a CNC router, they will come up with 100 projects they didn't even know they wanted, but now they need them yesterday. So depending upon how hard you want to work, be kind of selective in who you show projects to. It happens to me. And my problem is the hardest thing for me to do is say no, especially when it comes to my kids and grandkids. If I didn't learn how to say no, I wouldn't get anything done but their projects. So, it will guarantee you will have birthday and Christmas gifts for life. But if you are out to make this a business, then Garrett does have a great channel. He is into reviewing machines, setting up different machines, and upgrading his CNC routers. I know he recently went from a Bob CNC, which he still likes, and he's up to a Onefinity now. And Lord knows where he's going to go from there. His channel does have value. He's a very personable guy. But as you mentioned, he is also a salesman, and I'm not. So he does work with other bit manufacturers and companies behind the scenes. And I think that there is plenty of room for him and his channel, and he does have a lot of good information. So if you are thinking about turning your CNC hobby into a business, I would definitely check out his channel. And again, that is IDC Woodcraft. He does a very good job. He paces his videos well, and it's geared toward the beginner and the person who is just starting to think about it. So yes, he does a very good job. Let's see. Ayal Peleg said, following what you said earlier, when would you use the V bits and when the taper's ball nose bits? And this is in reference to the inlays. And as I said before, it's when you're talking about needing that deeper male plug to fit into the female portion of the inlay. Where did that come from? Wow. Pardon me, I need more coffee. If the inlay is just going to be decorative, say the numbers on a clock or the minute division lines on a clock, they're not going to get handled and they're not going to get beat on and hammered on. So the inlay can be thin. And for something like that, you could use a 60-degree V-bit or a 90-degree V-bit, because the inlay portion doesn't have to be that strong. If, on the other hand, you're doing cutting boards or charcuterie boards or things that are going to be handled and used, you want a deeper plug so that there's strength in that wood there. And that's when you would want to go with a V-bit with a steeper angle. Now, the reason for the tapered ball nose bit is because while you can find 10-degree and 12-degree V-bits out there, tapered ball nose bits are cheaper. And it doesn't have to be a real tiny tip. You can get a 1/8-inch tip diameter ball nose bit for relatively cheap that has a 10 or 11-degree angle on the sides. So it will cut that V-shaped female without having to go real expensive on a 10-degree V-bit that's going to go down to a needle point that's pretty delicate. So now maybe an 1/8-inch tip diameter on a tapered ball nose is too big and you need something smaller to get into tighter detail. They're easy to find. Most of us have them anyway if we're doing V carving. It's a multi-purpose bit. You get more use out of a tapered ball nose than you would, say, a 10-degree V bit, which is a single purpose bit, basically. So it's when you need that thicker male plug for strength, because it's going to be chopped on or beat on or handled a lot. That's when you would use that tapered ball nose for the male portion of the inlay. So let's see. We have another one here. Spindle TV did a good video on the emboss feature. Laney Shaughnessy rocks. He absolutely rocks. Laney is one of those guys who lives V-Carve and Aspire, as well as a couple of other programs, Conversational Cam and things like that. And he's good at what he does. He has a very good style. His content is overwhelmingly live streams. He streams on Tuesdays, and that interferes with a podcast that I do with my partner Eloy in Miami. So I don't get to watch live very often at all, but I do watch his content on replay. I'll put a link to Spindle TV in the description, and believe me, it is well worth a subscribe, because Laney's the bomb. He really is a good guy and one of the most genuinely nice people I've ever met in my life. So let's see. Would-be wants to know, is it possible to increase the y-axis just creating a movable base on my CNC? My machine is limited to 75 on Y, 60 on X. I need more range in the y-axis. I can't say yes. I can't say no, because I do not know how your machine is constructed. If your machine uses drive belts, it would be a case of getting longer belts and linear rails. If it uses lead screws or ball screws, it would be a case of getting longer lead screw or ball screw. If it's rack and pinion, you can add pieces of rack. It is possible to increase the length of your y-axis on most machines. I won't say all. Better bet would be for you to contact the manufacturer of your machine and ask them. They may even have kits. I know places like Avid CNC. They sell kits to convert a 48 by 48 machine to a 48 by 10 foot machine, or 8 foot, or any permutation in between. So it depends on the machine, it depends on the drive system, and it depends on your linear rails. Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm sorry, I can't give you a more definitive answer on that. Contact your machine manufacturer. So Paul Coffey says G code can be transferred with a floppy disk. Yeah, but who has a floppy disk drive? I haven't seen a floppy disk drive since the 90s. Paul, it's time to move into the 20th century. Get a thumb drive. And I know he was just pulling my leg on that. So, but having said that, I was cleaning out something in the closet, and I found one of those old organizers full of floppy disk, and I still have my AutoCAD on floppy disk. So if I could find a floppy drive, I could install AutoCAD. It'd be release 12, but I could install AutoCAD on my computer here. And no, I don't. I don't want to. Let's see. Let's see. Steve says, I've experienced noise resetting the USB interface on a PC when driving my CNC directly. My solution was to use a Raspberry Pi 400 with CNC control software and had no resets. That is a good option, and it depends a lot on your machine. He says earthing is important to us in the US. That's grounding. It is crucial. Also, using shielded cables is important. But when you're using shielded cables, you only connect one end of that shielding to an earth or ground. If you connect both ends, you will get a ground loop, and that will cause more problems than it cures. So if you use shielded cables that have the woven shielded wire along the outside between the outer insulation and the inner insulation, only connect one end of that shielding to a ground source or earth source, not both ends. So let's see. Okay, G&M Taylor. I use vCarve Desktop. What is the purpose of LastPass? I did a video on that, and I will link it in the description of this video as soon as we're finished live here. Basically, what a separate LastPass is if you've ever done a cutout, a profile cutout, and you have the little witness marks all the way around the outside perimeter where you can see the bit is cut at this level and then went down and cut at that level and then went down and cut at that level. Or you have the little round mark in one area where the bit plunged down to cut to the next level. A separate LastPass will remove that entirely. I almost always used a separate LastPass on any profile cutout, because what it'll do is let's say you have a tool path that's going to make 4 passes to cut out your profile. It'll make those first 3 passes a little bit big. And then on that last pass, it will lift out of the material, then plunge down in and cut the entire thickness of the material in one pass, removing all of those little witness marks. So it's a way of cleaning up the outside profile. I almost always use it. Always. And along with using a separate last pass, ramp in the plunge move, because that eliminates that circular mark where the bit plunges straight down. When a bit plunges straight in, there is going to be stress on the bit and on your CNC router, and you can get deflection either in the bit or in the CNC router. So to you, it looks like it's plunging straight down, but as it's plunging, it may curve that bit just a little bit until the material is removed, then it'll straighten out. That's all it needs to make that little witness mark where the bit is plunged in. By ramping the bit at least double the bit's cutting diameter, will make that ramp slowly lower itself down to that cutting level. And then adding that last pass will come along and remove all of those machining marks. So I will post a link to that video down in the description of this video as soon as we're finished. But it's a great option to use. I almost always use it. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Jigsy wants to know, what's the podcast you do? I do a podcast with my partner, Eloy Escojedo. I live in Oregon. He lives in Miami. It's not about CNC routers. It's not about woodworking. It's not about making in any way. It's two guys from different backgrounds, from different generations, on different ends of the continent, talking about life, the universe, and everything. We talk about pop culture. We talk about music. We talk about history. We talk about art, books, movies, you name it. It's called the Trampled Underfoot Podcast, and there's a link to it down in the description of this video and every other video on my channel. We stream live on YouTube on Tuesday evenings at 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. We spend the first hour doing the audio portion of our podcast. Then after that, we interact with folks in the chat who are throwing questions and making comments and what have you. It's just mindless entertainment with heavy emphasis on the word mindless. We have a lot of fun. We get some good discussions going, and it's just discussing life from two different perspectives from completely different people. That's called the Trampled Underfoot Podcast, and I'll see you Tuesday evening. There's a link to it in the description below. So let's see here. Beverly Benham says, I'm getting long estimates from VCarve on how long the tool paths will take to cut. Part of that is my being cautious with feed rates, but how accurate do you find those estimates to be? I'm new. Okay, what if you are getting an estimate in the software in VCarve, and then you get outside and you find that estimate is absolutely wrong, completely wrong. Let's say VCarve says it's going to take you 2 hours, and you go outside and on your machine it takes you 30 minutes. Let me show you something here. Let me go over. I don't have any tool paths, but I'm going to have to screen share Aspire here. Give me a second. It's going to take a second. to get things set up because I still don't have that software set up. Okay, so let me get into Aspire. I don't have any toolpaths created. Let me yeah, that's fine. I think I can do it with this. We go into toolpath summary. Okay. If you are talking about this estimated time, your time estimates are based on a rapid rate, in my case, of 200 inches per minute. That's the speed at which my router moves while it's not cutting. It'll move from the home position over to where it's going to start cutting. It's a max speed of 200 inches per minute. You can set that to what your rapid rate is on your machine. Now, also, if you get an estimate of 2 hours here, excuse me, pardon me, and you find it only takes you 30 minutes, you can scale the time estimate. So if it says 2 hours and you're getting 30 minutes, that would be a scale factor of 4 because it's only taking 1/4 of the time that it's estimating. So you can set that scale factor to 4.0, and that will change the time estimates here on the toolpath summary page. But you will have to time how long the cut takes while you're out there. Now, most controller software does have an elapsed time notification somewhere that will show you the actual amount of time. Now, there's no place in here for you to enter an actual time. You'll just have to kind of figure out, should my scale factor be 2 or 4 or 3.5 or 6 or what have you. But that is one way to do it. The other way is to look at your tool and what your feed rates and plunge rates are. Now, over here in my tool database, I have my feed rates. By default, I set them up pretty conservative, and my plunge rate is half of my feed rate. That is the default, but that's not always what I use. If I look at, for instance, a tapered ball nose bit, if I look at my 1/16 of an inch tapered ball nose bit, I have it set by default to be my plunge rate is half of my feed rate. But when I 3D carve, I do a roughing toolpath and leave a machining allowance of 0.02 to 0.03. So when I do the finishing toolpath, it's only going to be removing that 0.02 or 0.03 of material. I will raise this up so that my feed rate and my plunge rate are equal. I don't do it here in the main tool database. Let me cancel that, discard the changes. I'll come up here into a finishing toolpath. I'll select my bit, which will be that 1/16 of an inch tapered ball nose, and you see the feed rate and plunge rates. I'll select that bit, then come over here and edit the settings on that bit and change that so that the feed and the plunge rate are equal, then click OK. Using this edit command changes that feed and plunge rate for this tool for this job only. If I come over here to select and I look at that bit, it's still got the defaults that I had set in there. Now, the reason I bring this up is because if you are doing a 3D carving, the bit will always move at the speed of the slowest axis. And when we're talking about V carving as well as 3D carving, the slowest axis is always going to be your Z axis, and that's based on this plunge rate. So if you're V carving, check your plunge rate. Let's go to my go-to. I have my plunge rate set at half of my feed rate. So when that Z axis kicks in and that V bit is plunging down to carve deep, the whole machine is going to move at 25 inches per minute. So that's something to look at, is your pass depth. In my case, it's 0.108, but mainly your plunge rate along with your feed rate. Now, I'm with you in that I start conservative. I always start conservative. I have very slow feed rates set as my defaults. Because I use Mach 3 as my controller software, I can adjust those feed rates while it's cutting. So I start off slow and conservative, then I'll speed that feed rate up as I see how it's cutting. And if I'm not getting any chatter from the bit, I'll continue to increase that feed rate. But when I do get a little bit of chatter, I will back that feed rate down until that chatter goes away, then continue on at that speed. So even though my software says that I'm cutting at 50 inches per minute, depending upon the in the wood or the material that I'm using, that may be way too slow. That may be way too fast. If I'm cutting high density urethane, I can speed that way up because that stuff cuts like butter. I may be running at 120 or 130 inches per minute. So it's, it's kind of a trade-off. I do start conservative, but I start adjusting that feed rate to speed things up until I start to get chatter. Then I back it back down a little bit to get rid of that chatter. So, but the number one thing on 3D carving and V carving is your plunge rate, because the whole machine moves at the rate of the slowest axis. So I hope that helps. I know that's more than you wanted to know, but it is the case. So Steve said, thanks for talking about the earthing grounding and cable earth and ground on one side. That's important, as I helped a friend with a plasma CNC regarding that issue. Yes, shielding is not there to ground the machine or ground the cable. It's there to allow interference to dissipate. It intercepts it and guides it to a ground point. It's not meant to ground your machine. A separate ground/earth is there to ground your machine. The shielded cable is just there to collect and pick up any interference that come in from fluorescent lights or motors, brush type motors. A lot of things will set up interference, and shielded cables are the way to go, but only connect one end of that shielding on that cable. So let's see. Marvin May says, can you do a last pass on a pocket? I don't remember. I think you can. No, you cannot do a separate last pass on a pocket. I wish you could. However, if you look at your pocket toolpath where you're at the section where you are deciding whether you're going to go offset or raster. If you're using offset, it's grayed out. You can't use it. But if you're doing a raster pocket, you have the option of making a profile first or last. And that is, if you've got a round pocket, it will make one profile pass around that shape. You can set it to do that first or last. I, generally speaking, set it to do it first, because that establishes that circle and reduces any possibility that a thin spot is going to chip out. I'd rather have it cut than chip. So I do the profile first, then come along and do the rest of the pocket on the raster. Now, if you're doing it offset, it doesn't need to create that pocket or that profile pass, because it's already going to do one. That's just the nature of the beast. So I hope that answers that. I do kind of wish they would let you do a separate last pass on a pocket, because there are instances where I would like to have one. So, okay, let's see. I'm going to make this the last question. Well, there will be two. So second to the last question here is B Treckle 5. Does roughing always hit the assigned clearance depth? What about at the stair steps? No, it doesn't. When you enter a roughing tool path, let me screen share again here, and we will get this all set up. Boom, go back into Aspire, close my pocket toolpath. When you do a 3D roughing toolpath, you have a couple of ways of doing this here. Personally, I use Z level. Z level is what's going to create those stair steps. But there is also up here a machining allowance. I tend to use a machining allowance of 0.02 to 0.03. What that means is when that bit gets out here and starts cutting that roughing toolpath, the closest it's going to get to the actual finished surface of that model is between 0.02 or 0.03. So it's not going to get down and actually carve the finished surface of the model. It's going to stay away from it. If you use the Z level, what Z level means is it's going to use let's see, I've got a 1/2 inch end mill selected here. The Z level means it's going to go down to the pass depth of that bit, and that it's going to carve away everything it can reach at that depth. Then it'll move down again and cut another pass. Now you can do a 3D raster roughing, and it will raster back and forth, in my case along X, staying that 20,000ths of an inch away from the finished surface. That will remove a lot of that stepping, but it also increases the machining time, because basically what you're doing is you are carving away the entire model with that larger bit, then coming back with your finishing pass and removing that 20,000ths of an inch. So I tend to use Z level because it's faster. 3D raster basically will double the machining time it takes to carve a 3D model. And if you've ever carved 3D before, you know that 3D carving just takes time, and that's all there is to it. You're essentially doubling it by going 3D raster. So that's just me. I prefer to use the Z level. It doesn't always hit the assigned clearance depth. That's the minimum. That's as close as it will get. It could be further away, but that's as close as it will get. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers that question. So let's see. I'm going to do one more. And this is Tommy Jaskolski. Is Mach 3 a user-friendly system to use and learn? And do you know if it can be used with an X-Carve? I have no idea. I would go on to X-Carve's website and check with them. If their controller system will work with Mach 3, they'll let you know. If it won't, they'll let you know. I would ask them. Is Mach 3 user-friendly system to use and learn? To a point, yes. It's not easy to set up. You are expected to know a few things or have that information at your beck and call. I don't know if people have used Mach 3 with the X-Carve, but you have to set up getting the settings for your machine into Mach 3 is time consuming. And sometimes there's some trial and error in there, meaning you'll press Z. You want your Z axis to move down. You hit the button and it moves up because you didn't make a check mark, or it wants to plunge down instead of plunging upwards when you set it to do something. Getting it set up can be tricky, but once you get it set up, those settings are one of those set it and forget it, save those settings kind of a deal. When I go outside to cut something, I plug in my thumb drive, transfer the file over to that computer, load Mach 3, load that G code, set my X, Y, and Z 0, hit cycle start, and it goes. It's easy to use. It's not easy to set up. It can be pretty difficult, but check with your machine manufacturer. Having said that, Mach 3 is considered by many to be obsolete, and in some ways it is. They have since released Mach 4. Just me talking here. If I was getting ready to invest in a controller software and I was looking at Mach 3 versus Mach 4, I would go with Mach 4. It is newer. It's got a better interface. It's compatible with more machines. I would definitely look into Mach 4 instead of Mach 3. My equipment is so old. I bought the Mach 3 license. I found no reason to upgrade other than just to spend money. And I'm Scottish. That's kind of not in my DNA. So if you were looking at it, I would look into Mach 4 and I would hit up X-Carve and find out if Mach 4 could be used with an X-Carve. I really don't know. So let's see. So let's see. I think I'm going to go ahead and end this today. Let me just say, number one, I appreciate everybody who has used the super chat today and the super stickers today and in the past. And everybody who has clicked those donation links down in the description. You guys are helping me more than you would ever know. You're making this shop shed become a reality. I'm saving up my pennies. Now for the sheathing that's going to go up on the walls, prices have gone up again. They should be coming down soon. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood. And that's really going to help me get these walls sheathed so I can get moved in and start doing these live streams from out there and get the CNC router put in. I'm going to do a video on moving the CNC router and what's entailed in setting it up again, re-leveling it. I am going to have to resurface the spoil board. I'm going to have to do a whole bunch of different things just due to the fact that we picked it up and moved it about 20 feet into another shop. It's not just a one-time simple move it and plug it in and go thing. That can create problems like you wouldn't believe. So thank you to everybody who has donated and hit the super chat and hit the super stickers. Next week, I think I'm going to do an update on the Wordmark IT website and the browser extension that needs to be added, demonstrate it and show it how it works. Then I think the video after that, I'm going to go ahead and get into the raised text because there are many ways of doing it. Now, Michael Mazalik did a video, it's been a couple weeks back now, about doing raised text on text in 3D. And that was an excellent video. In fact, I will link it in the description box of this video as soon as we're done. And but what I'm going to do is a little bit different to show you how you can get the same kind of effects in VCarve using level clipping. But that'll be a couple weeks down the road. Next week, I'm going to go ahead and get back into Wordmark IT and do a little bit of work with fonts because I've been getting a lot of questions on fonts lately. So we can look forward to that next week. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about in this live stream or any other video, by all means, put them in the comment section down below in this video, and I will revisit them next week. So until then, I know it's hot. We've been on here for too long. Y'all keep yourself cool. Stay hydrated. It's just not worth getting out there and sweating over. So thank you very much for joining me. And y'all, gosh, I get the hiccups. Y'all take care.